Welcome back to Life Intended. I'm your host, Kelly Berry, and today's episode is another solo episode, and I'm excited about it. I have recently made the decision that I'm gonna wrap up season 1. This season has been incredible, and I wanted to create an episode where I took a minute to reflect on that, all that I've learned, all the amazing guests, and turn that into kind of like the 10 biggest takeaways. So here we go. I'm excited about this. I started this podcast in a season of life where I just wanted to get creative, like tap back into my creativity and do something that I was passionate about, something on my own, kind of solo. And I've had so much fun. I don't think that I anticipated all that I would learn, the amazing conversations that I would have, and really the incredible people that I would just have the honor to meet and interview. So this season and really this new part of my life has just been such a blessing, and I'm just so grateful for it. So I appreciate you all tuning in week after week for the conversations that we've had about my guests, for all the feedback that you've given me. But what I wanted to do with Life Intended really was just increase awareness around things that I was either curious about or felt like it was important enough to introduce more people to. So we've explored topics like personal growth, resilience, intentional living, and so much more: grief, alcohol, vision, all of these things. So it's been a lot of fun. And today, like I said, I'm going to be sharing what I think are my top 10 takeaways from season 1. These are the lessons, the actionable advice, and the themes really that surfaced over and over and over that resonated most with me and hopefully with you as well. I also want to take a little bit of time to talk about what's coming in season 2. I plan to be back early 2025. I'm going to say right now about mid-January, but I'm not exactly sure. It will be soon. I will keep you all updated. I've already got some really great interviews recorded and ready to go that I know you'll be excited about, and I'm really excited about. So the top 10 takeaways from season 1. We're getting started. So number 1, it's from episode 1. At What Cost? Listening to Your Gut, Doing Hard Things, and Taking Action with Lindsay Vastola. Episode 1 is one of my most listened to of all time. And in it, Lindsay talked about the importance of tuning into your intuition and how trusting your gut and taking bold actions, even when they're uncomfortable, can lead to your personal breakthroughs. And this topic of intuition and trusting your gut is actually something that in the women's circle that I've been co-facilitating with another one of my guests, Sadie Wackett, we've been talking a lot about this. It is something that's going to come back in season 2, and I'm going to go more in depth with it. But we, in general, this conversation came up over and over with my podcast guests, especially as women, have lost the ability to listen to ourselves for a lot of different reasons. And it's kind of complicated, but it's something that I think is so important that we figure out how to listen to ourselves again, to what we want, to what we need, to what we think that we should do, because intuition is really, really powerful. So Lindsay, one of the things, like her kind of spin on it, was that when you learn to trust your gut, you're really aligning your actions with your values, which allows you to make decisions that are more aligned with living intentionally. So I thought that was really good. So for each of these, I want to do a little bit of takeaway, like an actionable advice. So for this one, what I'm suggesting, if you're interested in kind of tapping back into your own intuition, to start by asking yourself, what is one decision that I have been avoiding because it feels hard? And just sit with that question for a little bit. And then once you think through it, commit to taking one very small, it can be the most smallest step from it, but taking one step to move forward with that. Takeaway number 2 actually is from episode number 2, also a really popular episode with my good friend Sadie Wackett, Lowering the Bar, Ditching Perfectionism, and Limiting Beliefs. So Sadie is, I mentioned this in the episode, but she's a global CHRO. She is also a coach. And when I want to say also a coach, it just doesn't give Sadie enough credit, or I guess just highlight her talent and skill. I just mentioned we're co-facilitating a women's circle, and every time I go to one of our sessions, I'm just kind of blown away at Sadie's presence, her ability to listen, her ability to reflect and really just hear people, in the magic that happens when she does that. I think she is just super talented. Spoiler alert, there's going to be a lot more to come with Sadie and I in the future in season 2 and in other ventures as well that I'm really excited about. But one thing that she talked about and I love is lowering the bar as women, especially as women who have or are labeled as perfection, we're perfectionists or we have perfectionism tendencies, how lowering the bar and helping you kind of break free from some of those expectations can actually help you accomplish more and get things done. So she talked about how perfectionism is kind of rooted in fear and limiting beliefs, and that letting go of some of these just unrealistic expectations of ourselves can help us open up our creative pathways and just be more joyful. The actionable advice from this episode, I want you to take one task or one thing. And right now, as this podcast is coming out, we are in the thick of the holidays. And so this is probably going to be pretty relevant to a lot of people. You've got a lot of things on your plate. So take one of those things and ask yourself, what's the simplest version of this that I can do that's still okay, it's still acceptable, that I would still be proud of, and use this as an opportunity to start to feel what lowering that bar actually feels like to you. So take one task, execute the simplest version of it, and then just check in with yourself and ask yourself, how did that feel? And how can I do more of this? Takeaway number 3. This one, I love this. So this is from episode number 7, Become a Better Leader, Insights on Agency, Accountability, and Resilience with Nick Barry. So this is the episode that I did with my husband. Probably, I'd have to go back and check right now, but this is the number 1 or 2 most listened to episode. It's really good. It's got a lot of great stuff in, shows our personality a lot. But this one talked a lot about leadership and agency. And agency is something that is just at the core of what Nick does and how he works and what he does through the coaching relationships that he has. But leadership's another theme that came up a lot in this season, whether it's, in your personal life or in your work life. But we talked about how agency, which is the ability to take ownership of your life, empowers you to lead with purpose and intention. 2 things from this episode that kind of stood out to me upon reflection. One is this conversation that Nick and I had in it where we're talking about removing friction from our lives. And the example that he used was this rug that we had in our house that every time he opened the door, it would get caught on the door and he'd have to stop what he was doing and straighten it out until finally he's just we're getting rid of this rug. And so the second one was just talking about agency and how things that may not be your fault, but they are still your responsibility, and how you can frame that in your mind to take control and make things happen. You really are responsible for the things that happen in your life, and your life is a result of what you are doing with the things that you're responsible for. Whether that is something that is easy for you to stomach or not is really, I guess, indicative of how much agency that you're executing regularly. So 2 actionable advice for this one. One is, I think it would be awesome if you would take a moment and identify one piece of friction in your life. What is something that just you accept, but you don't have to? Every time you walk in the door, there's stuff on the counter where you need to set something down. Or every time you put this particular toy away, it falls off the shelf 3 times before it stays. What are the things that you can stop doing over and over like madness and just fix it so that you eliminate that friction in your life? Figure out what that is and take care of it. And the second one would be to really sit with this agency question. What is one thing in my life that I'm not taking the responsibility for that I should, because it is my responsibility, and how am I going to show up differently for that thing? And I think that that would really, as we're preparing for next year and you got these goals and you got this vision, figuring out what is your responsibility and how are you going to create change in your life, basically. That was a great episode. I would highly recommend taking a listen to that one if you haven't gotten to it yet. That takes us to number 4. This is from episode number 13, From Corporate to Consultant, Lisa Rigoli on authentic leadership and building trust. So this episode, we talked about a lot of things really, but Lisa talked about the transition from her corporate life to becoming a consultant, and how her and her organization now that she's created as a result of that over the past 2 years, which her business, it's incredible. I would highly recommend you check her out, follow her on Instagram. She's doing amazing things, but they do a lot of transition management within bigger organizations when they have a leadership change or something else. And trust building is something that they do a lot. So we talked about that. But one thing that really stood out from this episode for me, and that it was kind of a tangent in the conversation, was the scarcity mindset and the abundance mindset, and how a lot of times when we get stuck in the scarcity mindset, it pulls us away from acting in accordance with our values. It keeps us living small, and it prevents us really from reaching our potential. And so we talked about just like how important it is to shift that scarcity mindset, even when that requires that you say no when you would really like to say yes. And you kind of have to lean into some scarier decisions, I'll say, some decisions that may not feel that comfortable, but really that when you can operate from a more abundant mindset, that it will help you reach your goals faster. It will help you stay, the example I used in the episode was like, when you operate from a scarcity mindset, you'll look up, in 6 months or a year, and you won't even recognize the path that you're on. You'll be so far from your goal because you're saying yes to things that aren't helping you get there, because you're afraid that there won't be, whether it's enough, in business or in personal life, whatever it is. These decisions aligned with a scarcity mindset just lead you down a different path. And yeah, before you know it, you'll look up and you won't even recognize the path that you're on anymore. That was a really awesome, I guess, kind of tangent that we went down on that episode, but there's a lot of really great points in there. And again, Lisa's awesome. Check her out on Instagram. So the takeaway from this one is I want you to think about where or what kind of situation or where are you acting with a scarcity mindset in your life? Where are you making decisions because you think there isn't enough? This can be financially, this can be in your career, this can be with your time, but really just thinking about like, what would it look like? How would I act? And what would change if I shifted from thinking about this through the lens of scarcity and switch to the lens of abundance? I think you will be really surprised at the difference that would make. And so number 5, this one came from episode number 21, Writing Your Own Story, The Power of Vision and Goals with Bossy Akadiri. Bossy is someone that I did not know before I started this podcast, but I am so glad that I know now. We have stayed connected since recording our episode. She's been a great resource, and we just had some really, really great conversations. Bossy, she's got an interesting story, but basically the episode was all about how you have to figure out what you want in life, and create this vision for yourself. And that's really the first step to taking steps in your life that will get you to that vision. But one thing, actually, there are probably 2 things that came from this episode that I really, really loved. And one is, Bossy's whole philosophy is really rooted in joy. Taking a step back and aligning like what you want for your life and what brings you joy. And this is just so in alignment with the whole podcast theme of living an intended life, living one of authenticity, and really tapping into like, what is it that you really want? Because you only get one life and you only get one opportunity to show up every day and be grateful and happy and joyful. And everything that Bossy does is really, it comes back to that joy in your life. And she talks a lot about agency and personal responsibility as well. You can't just be like, I want to be happy every day. You've got to do the things and make the moves to move towards that vision, but making sure that the vision is one that you actually want, I think is really important. But the other thing that Bossy talked about that is equally as important is her whole like people on the bus. And you hear that a lot if you're in corporate or you own a business, is having the right people on the bus on your team to help you like reach your objectives. But in Bossy's world, or what she's doing with her company, Goal and Grind, these are like, it's your personal bus. Who is around you that is helping you reach your personal vision? And I think, when you stop and think about like the people that you're interacting with and the energy they either bring or take from you, it can really impact your ability to reach your own goals, your ability to have joy in your life. So the actionable advice from this one is, I would like for you to take 10 minutes today to reflect on your vision for the next year, and write down maybe like what your big goal is, and then hold that up against the people who are on your bus. Who on your bus is really going to help you get there? Who's going to encourage you? Who's going to hold you accountable? And then maybe like who's not going to do those things? And are there steps that you can take to distance yourself from the people that should not be on your bus? Takeaway number 6. This comes from episode number 26, one of my absolute favorites, also with a new connection for me, but one that is just incredible. Episode number 26, The Early Detective, Lainey Jones on advocacy, resilience, and living with intention. So if you listen to this one, I'm sure you were as moved as I was in hearing her story. But Lainey Jones, at the time of recording, we shared that Lainey is a 6-time cancer survivor. Since our episode, she was actually diagnosed with a 7th type of cancer, lung cancer, that she has undergone radiation for, and she's just finishing up her chemo for her glioblastoma. But Lainey's story is, it's miraculous, really, and inspiring about how she can show up in life with everything that she's overcome, with she's faced with, everything that she basically just endures on a daily basis, and reminds us that we get to choose how we show up every single day. And being able to see someone like Lainey do this every day is just so inspiring. So again, I encourage you to follow her on Instagram at The Early Detective. But the biggest takeaway from this episode, by far, hands down, is advocacy. You know your body best. And that if you feel like something isn't right, you need to explore that. You need to find a doctor who will listen to you, or any healthcare provider that will listen to you. And don't stop until you feel like you've got the answers that you need, that you have learned what you need to know. The other part of this advocacy piece that I think is really important is staying curious and knowing that just because a doctor tells you something doesn't mean that you have to accept it, or if you're not like jiving with your doctor, that you can ask for a new one or find a new one. And I think that if you have a conversation like this with a really good doctor, they will be encouraging of your questioning, that they will be excited about you basically standing up for yourself or making sure that you're getting the best treatment possible. And so always know that if you are being intimidated by a doctor or just not getting the answers that you want for you or the people in your life that you love, that you just need to stand up for yourself. Like nobody cares about your health or your body like you do. And like doctors are humans. They make mistakes. They are busy. They have a lot of stress, so making sure that you are acting like the CEO of your health is really, really important there. The actionable advice or takeaway for you from this one, and this doesn't have to be health related, but it can be, is just identify an area in your life where you've been hesitant to advocate for yourself. Really think about that, write it down, and then come up with a plan of what do you need to do to change that? What do you need to do to advocate better or communicate better about this area in your life? Number 7, this came from episode number 29. This was Navigating Mental Health in a Connected World with Dr. Julie Radlauer. Dr. Julie Radlauer joined me to talk about social connection. She is a wealth of knowledge. She has so much amazing experience, a 25-year career in mental health. She talked so much about, the importance of relationship, social ties, close ties, loose ties. We talked social media. We talked all kinds of things. But what I took away from this episode, and this did come up, it was a theme among a lot of episodes, is just how important relationships and relational health are to our overall health. We know about like physical health and working out. Mental health is being talked about more and more and more all the time. Relational health, I believe, is going to be one of the next things that we hear more about, learn more about, and it's just so important. I had talked a lot about numbers and stats in that episode, and there were some really striking stats on just like, your life expectancy is longer when you have more relationships in your life. I think in this digital age that we're in, where a lot of our relationships are more superficial through social media, that we could all really benefit from diving into some of these close ties, like the 2, 3, 4 close ties that we need in our life, and really nurturing those relationships, working on listening. I did another episode on listening, but figuring out like how to have deeper connections that are meaningful, not just an overall number of connections. So actionable advice from this, I would say, like, we're around the holidays, reach out to somebody, whether it's a friend or a family member or a colleague, somebody that you haven't connected with recently, but is an important person in your life, and schedule a time to have an intentional, meaningful conversation where you're sharing, where you're listening, where you're learning, and create that like close connection with that person again. Number 8, this is from episode number 32, From Chaos to Calm, Regulating Your Nervous System with Emily Steinis. I love this episode. It's one of my favorite from the season. Emily, I could have talked to her for hours, probably. She shared a lot of strategies around regulating your nervous system, and she talked about kind of like the 3 things that we are doing all the time that just keep us in more of a dysregulated state than in a regulated state. And one of them I think is so timely for where we are in the year and the holidays: boundaries. She talked about how important boundaries are when it comes to regulating your nervous system. We often think about boundaries, setting boundaries with our work life and personal life, but boundaries can be applied to everything. Your boundaries with the people in your life, your boundaries with social media, your boundaries around alcohol, your boundaries around what you will say yes to and what you will say no to. But these are so impactful. And I know if I just give you this example, you're probably going to have some kind of physical reaction to it. But think about when you receive a text out of the blue from a certain person in your life who is asking you to do something for them again, whether they're asking you to pick up some slack for them with an errand or their kids or whatever, or they're asking you to listen to them, to give you advice, something like that. The feeling when you get it, when you just feel like somebody is not respecting your boundaries, and maybe they're not respecting them, or maybe you haven't set any. So I want you to think about this type of situation when it happens in your life, what it looks like for you, and write down like 3 things that you are going to do to manage this boundary better in your life. Whether it's having a discussion with the person, whether it's, it can be as simple as like, anytime I get a text from this person, I'm going to wait 30 minutes to respond. I'm going to take time to think about what I'm being asked to do, to actually think about how I want to show up for this person and to actually respond to it. So write down like 3 things that you're going to do around that and work on setting healthier boundaries that will help you stay in this regulated state rather than being dysregulated all the time. She actually talked a lot about breathing as well. And another spoiler, in season 2, I have an interview with an expert on breathing. So we're going to talk a lot about that because it came up over and over and over in season 1 about the importance of breath work, the importance of meditation, the importance of breathing, and how to stop and take a breath and regain control of your fight or flight or whatever it was in whatever conversation it was. And so it kept coming up, and I was like, well, I want to talk to somebody who's going to tell us, like, how do we breathe? It can sound really simple, but I don't think that it's as easy as some experts make it seem. So we're going to talk all about breathing in season 2. I'm excited about that. Number 9, this was my solo episode, 10 questions for a more intentional life. I love this episode, and I got a lot of really great feedback about it. And I think I'll probably do this a little bit more regularly, but taking just some of the things that I've done in my personal and professional life and creating tools for you all so that you can, whatever it is in your life that you're struggling with, that you've got a tool to help you with. So this will happen to be like 10 questions that you can ask yourself. You can sit down and you can figure out, like, how can I show up more intentionally? Reflection is something that is so important to me. And I think that in general, we don't do it enough, but it's really the key to growth. And it gives you a lot of clarity in how you've responded to things in the past, how you want to show up for things in the future. And so reflection to me is just really, really important. So this one, it's not that long of an episode. It does have a download. So if you don't even want to listen to it, you can just go to the episode and download from the show notes. But what I would like for you to do is just set aside some time this week or before the end of the year to answer one of these 10 questions. They really do help you understand more about yourself and more about, like, what do you need? What do you need to be focusing on? What do you just need? And how you can take that information from yourself and go forward with it in a way that feels more authentic and more intentional to you. Number 10. This is my most recent episode. Again, I've gotten so much great feedback. It just came out earlier this week, but it's awesome. Number 37, Zone of Chaos, Navigating Perimenopause and Beyond with Kelly Maple. So this, again, Kelly is somebody that I didn't know until recently, but I was introduced by a mutual connection. And I'm so glad because Kelly not only came on and gave an amazing interview, but she really pointed me towards a lot of resources that have helped me understand perimenopause and what this kind of phase of women's health looks like. And I have listened to so many other podcasts as a result, started following new experts, have had really great conversations with a lot of women in my life. But this is something that, that there's so much about this that has been a mystery because in our culture, we just don't talk about it. We don't talk about it with our moms. We don't talk about it with our friends. And so there's a lot physically, emotionally, mentally that goes on during this phase of life. And Kelly really helped us understand a lot of that and gave us some advice on how to navigate it. So really, my actionable advice for this one is just check in with yourself. Listen to the episode, see if you have any of these things going on. I know for me, I don't know if I'm in perimenopause. I'm 43. There's a lot of it that I am not like relating to, but there are some things that are showing up for me that I have been attributing to other things. So I've had a lot of brain fog, a lot of memory issues. And I'm somebody who I would say, and I think that the people who are close to me in my life would say that I have an amazing memory. I remember everything. In some cases, I think it's kind of been photographic, but I remember really, I haven't had to set up a lot of systems for myself in my life to help me not forget things. And that has been something over the past few years that I have just struggled with. And it's been new for me. I've attributed a lot of that to the grief that I've been going through, brain fog and thinking, it must be the grief. I must be really tired. I'm a new mom. All of these things where it's just like, okay, I think maybe all of those things are contributing to it, but it could be something else as well. My sensitivity to alcohol. I know I had an entire episode on drinking less, but probably this is something relatively new in the past like 1 or 2 years. The way that I handle alcohol is just totally different. And it's something that I personally have chosen to cut back on significantly in my life because of that. The anxiety, just the how it makes me feel. It's like terrible. And that is also new. And then the third one would be sleep. So typically in the past in my life, if I've like cut out alcohol or cleaned up my diet, my sleep has been amazing. Well, I've done all of those things and my sleep is just not all that good anymore. So those are the things that I think, like, I was like, well, I don't sleep well because I have a toddler and I've had a baby. And, as parents, this, like, sometimes they sleep good, but then they'll go through a period where they don't sleep well and then everybody's sleep is off. And so I've just been like, well, my sleep is bad because of her and my memory is bad because of all of these other things. But I'm starting to think that there's just more at play. So my advice to you is take some personal inventory of this. And I think this can go for men and women. Think about like the things that, how you feel, how you're acting, and, are these things that could be associated with some hormonal imbalances? And if so, just make an appointment with your doctor or reach out to Kelly or find somebody in your life, in your kind of like healthcare team, if you have one, that can help you identify and start to work on these things. And it doesn't always have to be with medicine. They can be with lifestyle changes, anything else like that. So That was all 10. There were definitely a lot of themes that kept coming up that I talked about, of course, living intentionally, because it's the whole theme of the podcast. Resilience came up a lot. Health and well-being came up a lot. I think that that's just because it's something that's really important to me. So a lot of that got weaved into the episodes. Authenticity, self-awareness. I talked about breath work, and breathing came up a lot as well. But a lot of those things that just kept coming up over and over and over, we will see come up in season 2 for sure. So again, I appreciate you guys listening this season. It's been a lot of fun. I truly love it. I love it way more than I thought I would, having the podcast. And I've got a lot of ideas for season 2, probably a lot of small changes that you'll notice, but some bigger changes coming as well. Not just with the podcast, but with some other ancillary things that are gonna just help support us all in this journey of life and to live this one truly precious life that we have with more intention and more in the way that we want to, showing up for ourselves, showing up for others. So thanks for joining, and I will see you in 2025. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode. It's truly an honor to help bring these conversations to you. I do have a couple of quick favors to ask of you. While you're listening to an episode, could you take a screenshot and post that to your Instagram stories and tag me at Life Intended Podcast? And just let me know what your favorite takeaways were or what you liked about the episode. It really helps me to learn more about what you love and want to see more of. And if you have a few extra minutes, if you'd go to iTunes or wherever you listen, I'd love it if you could leave me a rating and review. Ratings and reviews are one of the best ways new listeners can find the show, and I'd love nothing more to grow this and help more people live a life intended. See you again here next week.